Welcome to the Oswego Alumni Podcast. I'm your host, Dee Perkins. Today's guest began acting at the age of 5 when he wrote, directed, and starred as Groucho Marx in a play at his elementary school. From there, he went on to perform through high school, later graduated SUNY Oswego with a double major in theater and communication studies. Recently, you may have seen him acting in Million Dollar Murder for Discovery Channel, the holiday movie I Believe in Santa, and playing Chris Martin's dad in Coldplay's music video, Champion of the World. But my personal favorite is his role as the yacht rocker David Bowie fan in the record company's video for How High. Please welcome 1991's Tim Mollen. Hey,
Hi,
Tim.
Dean.
Yeah,
So glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
you're coming to me not too far from where I am. You're in Binghamton, right?
It's a few hours down the road, yep, which was one of the main reasons that I went to Oswego, because it was just far enough away to be not running home every 5 minutes, but if I needed something, mom and dad were 2 hours away. So
Let's start with what people are really going to be excited to hear about, that you are a working actor. And I went through your IMDb page, but the thing that stood out to me was the video called How High. It looked like it was a blast. And I know that your background is in improv. Can you tell us a little bit about how much of that was scripted and how much of that was, hey, Tim, just have a good time?
so that was one of, if not the first gig that I had after COVID. And with COVID, I mean, I was completely alone with my cat in my little studio apartment for a year and a half, like no human contact. And after that, I think that was my first gig when I got back into auditioning and stuff after COVID. And I hadn't heard of this band. I've since gone on to listen to all of their stuff and love it. They're good old fashioned rock and roll. I can't even think of what to compare them to these days, but they're a throwback in a good way. Really solid music, and they write their own stuff. So I showed up on set at this beautiful house and pool in I've forgotten what part of LA it's in, but it's like a gorgeous neighborhood. And uh met the band, and they're like, okay, you're gonna be a yacht rocker. And I was like, well, that's typecasting. That's my music. So my favorite band is America. And I love all of that stuff, even if it's embarrassing to other people. Like, I mean, Carpenters? Sure. Captain and Tennille? Absolutely. And I hate actually that they call it yacht rock. It's like, okay, make fun of an entire genre of music. I'm like, oh, well, if I was picking music based on what other people thought of it, I never would be listening to that stuff to begin with. So they had me in pretty outrageous 70s clothes, as you saw at the beginning of that video. I'm in like a gold velour shirt and necklace and those yachtsman's cap. Nobody looks good in a yachtsman cap, including the skipper from Gilligan's Island, the captain from the Captain and Tennille. Just, it's not a good look. So I had that, shades and stuff. So I was one of about 8 people that were playing the middle-aged yacht rockers at this pool party. And the narrative of the video is we're rocking out down by the pool, listening to old stuff. And then this band shows up that we've hired to play the other half of the party. You're like, okay, we're going to be down here by the pool. The kids are going to be upstairs on the deck, and we'll hire this band to come in. So they come in and just rock it. And they bring all these fans. So it turns into a huge house party, and everybody's throwing stuff around. Everybody's diving into the pool with their clothes on. Really fun. And being a complete ham, they quickly ascertained, they're like, hey, let's move that guy up to the front. He's making goofy faces, and it's really funny. So they started adding more stuff, and then they were like, okay, we need somebody to make a transformation from a yacht rocker to a Bowie fan. And they asked me, I was like, sure. So they gave me the Ziggy Stardust full makeup, which looked terrific. And then so I like transform like a vampire or something into a real rocker. And then the rest of the video, I'm making an ass of myself, which is pretty much my goal in life.
No, it
I
was
could go
so
on
much
at such
fun.
length about one music video, but that was so much fun, and they're a great band.
So much fun to watch. I felt like I said to you earlier, I felt like I know you. Everything I need to know is in that video. When I
It was,
watched you afterwards playing the morgue guy who's
yeah,
cutting into a body, I was like, no, this doesn't feel like this is,
yeah.
but I mean, that's acting. You did transform yourself. I'm just saying, I think I like you really as a comedy crazy person.
Most people do, yeah. And so I've been in, I think, four of those like investigation discovery channel true crime shows, and it's a different thing. It's not as fun, but it's its own thing. So yeah, I played like a in that episode that you saw, I was a coroner, and I've been the perp, I've been a suspect, and I've been a cop. So I've kind of covered all those territories on that. And I think that's where a lot of people new to the industry start getting their sea legs, is doing shows like that because they're non-union, so they don't have that restriction to get the work. Um, so, anyways, that's a little bit about the true crime stuff that all newbies to LA pay their dues and do some of that.
So in my intro, I talk about at 5 years old, there you are doing Groucho Marx. And I know who Groucho Marx is. I'm not sure if your audience of 5-year-olds and parents knew who Groucho Marx was, but did you know your entire life that this is it? I want to be an actor. There's nothing else.
Pretty much. Um, yes, my mother tells stories about me at the doctor's office when I was 3 years old, dancing for the other people in the waiting room, and just got, and I'm not I'm still not a dancer, but just the fact that I was trying, they found hilarious. Similarly, when I did this Marx Brothers thing, I thought I was a brilliant auteur and comedian, and they were laughing because of my writing and my really sharp directing skill. They were laughing because it was a 5-year-old who thought he could write and direct and star in this thing, and I'm on stage directing the thing in real time. I'm like, bring in the curtain. Okay, you come up and stand a little closer. So people were just like, who is this kid? He's he's going to be something. We're not sure it's going to be something great, but he's going to be something.
I imagine once you got into high school, it became maybe a little bit more serious. Tell me about some of the shows and the things that you did once you got there.
So I went to 16 years of Catholic schools and have really only good things to say about it. So it was a very good experience for me. I still have many friends that I grew up with in those days. And in high school, we had the high school gym had one of those just basic stages at the end, one end of the room, uh, with literal footlights. Like there was this beat up aluminum around this row of light bulbs, and that was our lighting. So it was very low tech, but it didn't matter. So we did all the classic musicals. We did South Pacific, Little Mary Sunshine, which people won't be aware of, but um, The Music Man, and I got to be the music. I got to be the Music Man in that, and Guys and Dolls, and I was Nathan Detroit in that. And then we
Perfect.
did plays, and they were comedies like You Can't Take It With You, Arsenic and Old Lace. So shout out to three people from my high school that were very much my mentors, and that's Mary Peg Mathis, Joanna Goff, and Jan D'Angelo, who's a legend in this area for all that he's done for the arts.
So you reached a junior high school level as a junior or a senior, you have to start looking at colleges. Did you think Juilliard? Did you think, I'm going to be a serious actor? Or, you went to Oswego, which also has an amazing theater department. What was your process?
It's funny you say Juilliard because I did apply to Juilliard, and my father drove me down there, so I had my audition and everything, and didn't get accepted, but that's okay. Had a very close friend, and I took her to her senior prom when I was a junior. So she's an alum from the class of 1990 at Oswego. Her name's Lisa Sleeper. She's been very successful. She works down at Walt Disney World, and she's been there for 40 years as a performer in all their street theater stuff. And now she's a manager and director of that stuff. So she's successful and a great person and hilarious. So she had gone to Oswego the previous year and spoke very highly of the professors and the program at Oswego. So I was like, and again, I looked at it, I was like, that's just far enough away from home that I won't be running home every 5 minutes, but I've got some distance from mom and dad. And I went up and visited her and fell in love with Oswego, as you did, and I'm sure everybody listening.
So I love that you majored in theater and comm studies. It to me feels like there's a backup major happening there.
That was to please my parents. They were like, well, you can't do just theater. I was like, oh, okay, I'll take communication studies. And then within that program, they urge you to go into one of the tracks, and each one of those are practical, like broadcasting, public relations, speech disorders. And I was like, yeah, I can't just, I'm going to do the general communication studies track. And that's a little loose, So it's like, I'm not sure how I applied that in a more specific way. Still got a lot out of the classes and great professors, but I have to admit that, yeah, that was the double major was for my parents, who were paying for all this, and thank you, mom and dad, for that.
Were there any classes that you took where you said, okay, now I'm in my zone, these are my people, and I know I'm in the right thing?
Yes, I would say two things. My freshman year, there were three main acting and directing professors, and your older viewers or listeners may remember these folks. It was Rosemary Nesbitt, who was always a historian, and she's a legend in the city of Oswego. She was very old school, and she directed things that were like what I did in high school. So she liked just the classic, old-fashioned, hey, let's put on a show. And that's what I was used to. So she cast me in A Miracle on 34th Street as a drunk Santa. And then she cast me in my very first Shakespearean role, which became a lifetime love of mine. She cast me as Bottom in A Midsummer Night's Dream. So
I
that
didn't
was
know
right
the
up my alley.
I didn't know the answer to that, and that was going to be my first guess.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah, that's a classic comedy role. And I went on to do more serious roles. Actually, I probably the best. My favorite was Iago in Othello. So I love Shakespeare, and I've directed productions of it too. But anyways, um, she and I recognized in each other. Oh yeah, I'm like, this is the director, and she's like, this is the actor for that kind of stuff. But thankfully, another professor there named Mark Cole, who ended up later being the chair of the department, wonderful guy. I'm still good friends with him. He's supported everything I've done over the years. And he was directing more experimental things and tough subjects and drama. He still was great at directing comedy too. But he was very encouraging. So between the two of them, it was like Rosemary played to my strengths, Mark was bringing me along into this where I was like, I don't know if I want to do that weird exercise, but then I was so glad I did. So by the end of the 4 years, I was more in Mark's camp of wanting to do stuff that's a little more out there. And in between, there was another great professor, Ron Medici, who was did the musicals and operas, and he was great too.
I'm giving you a lot of thumbs up. You were singing it, but not everybody's singing it. I went to Oswego to be a theater major,
Oh,
and
you did?
I did. And so I took classes from both Ron and Mark, but I walked into the campus radio station and I fell in love and I said bye to theater and just went the comm studies broadcasting track. So yeah,
And was that Fritz? Who was heading that up at that point?
that was for Smasser and Doc O'Donnell.
Okay. Two
Yeah.
legends. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the whole point of college is finding what your thing is. And I was one of the lucky ones. Freshman year, I found it, and as I always like to say, I never left Hewitt.
And
I
I've
was
gone back up, as I'm sure you have, and seen the new facilities are just phenomenal. And I'm so happy that they've invested in that program in particular. And they've redone Tyler Hall for the theater program. It's terrific.
I was recently up for inauguration, and I had an event I was going to in Tyler Hall. It was the media summit. And I'm
Okay.
standing outside of Tyler Hall, and I said, I have not been in this building since 1984.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really funny. And the theater in there is amazing, and I'm so jealous of these students. I
Yeah.
really am. Wow, they have everything.
Which they should. It's earned its reputation, and I'm glad it's thriving as a program.
So one of the cool
Three
things
of
that
those have two of those three professors have passed away. God rest their souls in peace. Mark is still around, but is retired, thankfully, and is enjoying his life and still doing some acting and directing. So he still maintains a connection. Love you, Mark, if you're watching.
we love you, Mark. He doesn't remember me. I took one class. All right. So another thing that you did when you were in Oswego was you're founding member of the Shaun Cassidy Fan Club, which is really funny because I literally thought it was the Shaun Cassidy Fan Club. And I messaged you on Facebook and said, he is a producer of New Amsterdam. And you're like, yeah, that's not what we are.
Like, yeah, it's not really a fan club.
I'm
I kind of
glad you
feel
like
bad
Shaun
about it.
Cassidy. Good for you, but no, that's not.
Yeah. And that was a big part of the reason we picked that name. So I came back after a semester in London, which I saw improv comedy performed for the first time. And we didn't have any of that going on other than as a rehearsal technique in classes. And it wasn't focused on comedy, but it was improvisation in dramatic situations. So came back to Oswego determined to just get some friends together and do this. We didn't rehearse. We didn't have structured games. We didn't know about theater games like they do on Whose Line Is It Anyway? So we just once a week started doing an hour of improv comedy, either in Hewitt Union or the Lab Theater in Tyler. It was free. And around that time, I was in a 6-man suite in Onondaga Hall. Each one of us picked a theme for a party to have in the suite. Mine was Tim Mollen's 70s flashback.
Love
And
it.
my good friend Jennifer Arnold showed up in her 70s regalia, and she brought like 3 albums by Shaun Cassidy. And she was a true blue fangirl for him. I was like, Shaun Cassidy, huh? It's like, I don't know that most people even know who he is anymore, even though this was only 10 or 15 years after his heyday. I was like, maybe that's the thing. We should put up these signs. So the Shaun Cassidy Fan Club was the name we picked. And just as you just said, it's still working, that name, because people were on campus going, what the F is that? Shaun Cassidy? Really? So we had people show up and be like, I thought you guys were really a fan. I'm like, no, no, just a weird, funny name.
I love the idea of improv, but it is also extraordinarily terrifying. Can you explain to everybody what your theory of improv is?
My theory is it's for lazy actors who are good at BS. Because to me, it ended up being one of the banes of my existence is memorizing lines. So there was no, and I shouldn't say this because improv, I've been to training programs. I graduated from Second City's conservatory program. So I've done the training, but I don't think training is really the main thing with improv. It's kind of you can do it or not. It's not something you can teach somebody. You can just give them like a safe place to play and other like-minded people. Um, so I would say my theory of it is unstructured and fun, and do it with a group of people that you're relaxed with and that are supportive, like a team, where it's not just like a stand-up mentality of I am going to go in and slay. It's like, no, you want to go in and create something real, even if it's not funny. And yeah, so it ended up not knowing about all these improv games. We just did an hour of straight improv and then found out years later that nobody does that. Like Second City doesn't even do that. So that we did the toughest thing there was to do in improv, which is, 60 minutes of just going out, getting one suggestion, and then just doing a scene. So in our ignorance, we took on the biggest challenge in that area of theater and all got a lot out of it.
So you've brought improv into business situations. And I think people outside of the improv area know, Amy Poehler, Tina Fey, Second City, Martin Short, Eugene Levy, all of these comedy legends are
Yeah.
famous for their improv. And yet you've brought it to the business world. Big question here is, do you have to be funny to do improv?
To do improv comedy, yes. Not to try it, not to take a class to be more confident, like if you want to become a better public speaker or communication within your team, if you're a manager and want to get more comfortable with just standing in front of people and having a back and forth. But for improv comedy, yeah, you've got to be funny. And no one can teach you to be funny. You can hone skills and learn little strategies that you can use, but even at Second City, as soon as you walk into a class, you'll know within 10 minutes, all right, that one, that woman, that guy are the ones who are going to shine in here because this just plays to the strength of people that are ham.
Do you subscribe to the theory? I know a little bit about this. So do you subscribe to the yes and?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Yeah, so agree with everything, and that moves the scene forward. If you start saying no, so if I come out on stage joining another person, I come on and say, are you going to join me for the parade? It's going on right now. And they go, there's not a parade. I'm just watching TV. And it's like, okay, then you come up with something, So if on the other hand, you're like, yeah, in fact, I just finished making the float with my family and we created the huge Scooby-Doo thing where it's the mystery machine. Um, so yes, and is extremely important
I
in
actually
in
I
life,
find I
actually.
find that yes and actually helps you in life and in conversations. You know,
Yes.
right?
And
Oh, he
yeah,
just said yes and.
things just work better when you're in agreement and a team player and encouraging and moving forward rather than just shutting things down with no.
So as an actor right now, as a working actor, are you looking for roles that incorporate improv, or because you're a starving actor, you'll just take anything?
Pretty much. There's things that I don't go for various reasons, but yeah, I'll do a lot of not glamorous. Like I joined oh my gosh, what's it called now? Central Casting in LA when I moved out there. So that's all just being an extra, doing background work. And that was good to learn how to do that. So, I was walking around in the back of Grey's Anatomy, Veronica Mars when they relaunched that, whole bunch of shows. And that was a valuable experience that all actors should have. So you respect everybody from the top to the bottom of whatever production is being created.
For the students who are right now going through the acting program, just like you did, what advice do you have for them that maybe are going to pack up their bags and go to LA?
Um, Number one would be do that. Go some to one of the big cities where it's up. So if you're an actor, graduate, definitely get your degree, but then whatever you have to do to end up living in a big city that's a center of theater, you should do it. Because I spent many years here in my hometown of Binghamton, New York, and had a lot of success here, particularly as a director. But has it gained me anything in the larger outside world? Not really. So that's why even late in life, I decided to move to Los Angeles when I was 48. I was a little late. So I would say, yeah, first thing is I do encourage them to move to a big market if they are serious about it. The other thing is maintain your connections to Oswego people because we're everywhere. Was taking a class at Second City a few years ago. They have the conservatory program is in Hollywood as well as Chicago. And I was there and some young man approached me and said, "Are you Tim Mollen?" I was like, um, yeah. And he said, "Well, I was in the Shaun Cassidy Fan Club. I graduated a couple of years ago." So here we are in Hollywood and we had that connection. And yes, I would say take any work you can get, but know your limits too. Like this is kind of hilarious. I found myself having to turn down two roles that required nudity within my first year in LA. I was like, who wants to see this? Nobody wants to do. Is this a horror film? Um, but so it was strange, but yeah, I had to be like, no. One of them was to be nude in kind of a Will Ferrell funny way.
Okay.
Like I come to the door and it's a commercial about a nudist camp, and I'm the goofy looking guy who answers the door and is naked. And I was like, I like being funny, but I'm not one of these people that will do anything for a laugh. I'm like, no, I'll keep my clothes on and be laughed at for my mind, not
And
for my out of shape, pale body.
this commercial, where is that going to air?
Well, it didn't show anything too much, or they blurred out. You'd be wearing like a skin colored bikini briefs or something like that, but it just wasn't something I wanted to do. So you got to know your limits, um, and maintain those connections and foster those. Spend time. There's little communities of Oswego people in the big cities. Go to the alumni events there, meet people, and work together. That's what most people that you see that are in the movies and in television, they're in these little communities of people that grew up together or went to school together or had their first job as extras on something. Um, and that still goes on. Martin Scorsese works with the same like five actors for 50 years. So there's a lot to it that's about connections. And so you got to have the talent. Yes. One last point. Now that I've given you five things when you asked for one, um, that uh, oh, now I forget the point. So let's move on.
I imagine the same
This
goes for
is one of the signs of my advancing age is that I lose my train of thought.
I imagine the same goes for New York City. If you're going to be in the theater on stage, the same goes that there are Oswego groups of people there, correct?
Even more, I would think, in New York because it's so, fairly close to Oswego. So yeah, and I've been there for theater reunions. Every 5 years or so, we would have one of those Blackfriars, the fraternity of theater people, would host those and probably still do. And yeah, there's a lot of people from Oswego in New York doing everything, and a lot of technical people too. Because Oswego has a great program in production and design. So my college roommate, who's still one of my close friends, his name is Dan Walker, and he has been the second in command in lighting for 40 some years on Broadway.
Oh.
So there's only like three or four working lighting designers in New York. They get all the work. So Dan's been the second in command, but hasn't been able to break through into that, these coveted spots that these people stay in for life. But he's been very successful, and I'm proud of him. And he got his first gig in New York from another Oswego grad who came back to teach a class. His name was John Harretts. He was working on Les Miserables. And so Dan, before he even left Oswego, had done an internship as a lighting design apprentice on Les Mis. And this was, 1990, so it was still a pretty new show even. So yeah, the tech program is great too at Oswego.
In your resume, you have other things that you've done other than acting. You've been a director, produce, writing. Is there, I imagine that acting is your first love, but what would be your second?
Writing. In
Mhm.
fact, I don't even know that, and directing. I don't know that I have a favorite among those three. The performing was a bigger thing for me when I was younger. Um, Writing's gotten to be a bigger thing for me, and directing allows me to get outside of the things I'm limited to in acting. I'm a character actor and I do comedy, so I can do drama, but it's a little tougher sell for me to go into a room and sell myself as I'm going to knock your socks off as the villain in this piece or whatever. So yeah, the that's definitely a thing.
So the other advice I imagine you give to people is broaden your horizons outside of just acting. Always have a backup.
Yes, because this isn't something you typically hear from people that are invited to talk to an alumni group or something about their being a success. I've had a lot of fun and I've done a lot of creating stuff. I've never made a living in the arts. Honestly, I've had to be a technical writer, a marketing writer, a teacher, many, many things. But as I told my family years ago, I'd rather be a starving artist doing something that I care about and enjoy creating with other people than be some drone in a 9 to 5 workplace. So, as you get older, it's like, well, maybe I'm not going to be on Saturday Night Live, but I'm doing Showboat down at the community center. And it's like, hey, man, that's great. People love that too.
There's a place for everybody, and I think it's so impressive that you have said, this is where I want to be. I want to be in theater, and to stay with it your entire life. That is really impressive to
Oh,
me.
thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
that's why I wanted to talk to you and Shaun Cassidy.
you. Absolutely.
All right, so sidebar, you also wrote a humor column called Lost Journal,
Yeah.
and I love that I am also Irish Catholic and went to 12 years of Catholic school.
How many brothers and sisters do you have?
I only have one. I don't know what happened there, but just
Then you're not Irish Catholic. Come on now.
okay, I'm going to trump you. My real first name is Deirdre.
Ah, okay.
Okay, I get extra points for that, don't I?
And the Gaelic pronunciation or the Celtic pronunciation is probably Shachinga.
And in the 60s, nobody knew how to say it. And that's why I now go by D because it just really got annoying.
Deirdre, that's a pretty name though.
Thank you. So
Hmm.
you wrote Lost Journal kind of based on your life. And I'm amazed that you have memories of your childhood and, a day in the life. Tell me a little bit about how that came about.
Through improv and at the very beginning of it. So I was teaching improv classes, which I've done quite a bit of over the years, developed my own training program and have taught a lot of folks. Um, and a gentleman that was in my improv class here in Binghamton, New York, was a writer for the paper, and he wrote a humor column, and he was leaving. So I said, "Hey, if I gave you a sample column, could you run it by the editors over there and see if they'd give me a shot at taking over that spot?" So it was good timing, and he did that for me, thank goodness. And they liked it, so they're like, "Okay, we'll start putting these in once in a while." And so for a few months here and there, I'd get a column in, and then I pitched them on, "Hey, can we do this as a weekly thing?" They said yes for very, very, very little money. I ended up being in over 300 newspapers and websites, making the exact same piddly amount of money that I made for being in the Binghamton newspaper. It's just really hard. So I came out of that. I wrote for, I don't know, 8 or 10 years of this memoir type comedy. Just the concept of Lost Journal was I never kept a journal, and that's the thing you're supposed to do as a writer. So I'm like, all right, I'll cheat and I'll write it in retrospect. So I was writing, and I'd pick a day in my past and write about it as though it were today. So I'd be writing about something from the perspective of a second grader going to the dentist, and still be writing it in an adult voice, but about things that are happening to a kid that age. So I wrote, stupid things like I wrote from the perspective of a fetus in the womb, what that experience is like, Catholic schools, being an actor, working terrible jobs, being in a big family. So I wrote that for about 8 or 10 years, I've forgotten, and then stopped specifically to put those all together, compile those into 3 books. And those are out there. Uh, they're on Amazon. Check them out. Lost Journal, volumes 1, 2, and 3. And there's a lot of good Oswego stories in there too.
Does that pay you a little bit better than the column?
Nope. No,
Sorry, kids, there's no money in this story.
no, there's not. Um, no, and that's a big lesson, really. I mean, it's the truth. It's hard to make a living in the arts, and most people are not successful at having it be their bread and butter. So if you're in the arts because you love it, hang on to that love and nurture it by only doing creative work that really feeds your soul, because the time, 0.00001% of the people out there trying to do what you're trying to do are making a good living consistently.
So I got your okay to talk about this before we went on. So everyone doesn't think I'm just hitting you with this. You've had interruptions in your life because you are a caregiver and you're a caregiver right now. And we mentioned to each other that we think that's important that we talk about because I don't think there's enough out there about people saying, I had to press pause on my life because my parents became in a situation where they needed care. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So, giving you the Cliff Notes version of this timeline, back in 2010, my father was in his final decline at the same time that my marriage was coming to an end. So my mom needed help taking care of my father, and I needed a place to go. So I moved in with them, was there for the last months of his life. Then my mother was sick, and we almost lost her within a year of that. And by then, my parents are quite a bit older. My mom was 38 when she had me, which was dangerous back in the 60s. Um, so I ended up staying, living with my mother, and figured I was there for the duration. Um, and it's a wonderful thing, but I also felt a little trapped. Um, so then, God bless mom, she got married again at age 86. Uh, and she married a guy who I grew up with his children. There's 8 McKinney kids. They're all great people, loved his family already. So then I was able to say, okay, so mom's taken care of. I'm unexpectedly have an opportunity here to start again. What do I want to do? First thought about going back to Chicago, picking up things with Second City, and then found out they had the same program in Hollywood. And I was like, no, I could use some sunshine. Um, and moved out there. So I was out there for 5.5 years. Meanwhile, about 2 years ago, my mom's second husband passed away, unfortunately. And it had become clear that mom wasn't going to be safe on her own. And I had promised her many, many years ago, probably when I was in high school, that if we came to a point in her life where she was going to go into a nursing home because she needed the medical care and absolutely needed that 24-hour coverage like that there's no avoiding that really, but that if there was an interim period where she could avoid being in a nursing home, just as long as somebody was with her, that I would be there. So I sold all my belongings, and my cat and I drove across country about 14 months ago. So yeah, put everything on hold as far as everything. So now I'm a full-time live-in caregiver for my mom. She's 93. She has dementia. Um, and so it's hard, but I know I'm doing the right thing. It gives my life purpose. And everybody that I've talked to who has been in this situation says you'll never regret the time that you spend doing this. And what's more important than giving a little something back to people that did everything for me? And I'm no martyr. This isn't a sob story. I mean, and this is everywhere in our country right now, and it's going to get more so with the baby boomers aging. Um, Saw a CBS report last fall that there's 53 million unpaid family caregivers in America. So there's 53 million people that are capable of being out making a living, who either can't do that or they do that in addition to caring for aging parents. So there are single mothers that are taking care of both of their parents who have dementia, and they're raising kids, and they work outside the home. It's and our country just hasn't prepared itself for this, and we don't have a handle on it, and it's already a crisis.
And I'm older than you, and so I have friends who are going through this. It almost seems cyclical, that one of us goes through it, and then the next one of us goes through it, and um, the the level of hard that this is, it cannot be overstated, because you're used to being a child to this person, and suddenly you're not. You
That
are.
role reversal is very tough. And she and I talk about that. I say, Mom, I don't want to be the parent in this situation. Um, and it's hard for me too. And I tell her also, I would be reacting to things the exact same way that she is, and I will someday, to losing your independence, having somebody else have to make more and more of the decisions. Um, so yeah, it's tough but rewarding.
I love that you think about that. I thought about that all the time, and my husband's family is going through it now. And I say to him, imagine someone saying you can't drive anymore.
That
That
was the biggest step for her that she still says was the toughest thing when she couldn't drive anymore. That's a lot of your independence, just going where you want to go when you want to go. That's
and
hard.
and the beauty, like, so sometimes I drove up and back to Oswego a couple of times last week, and looking at the trees and looking at it filled my soul. I yeah.
Yeah.
It is hard, but I'm glad you wanted to share that with people, because in not talking about it, we're making people feel like they're alone and going through this by themselves. And and especially men aren't really talking about it with other men, so the more we talk about it, the more we get the word out that this is happening. And if you just ask somebody, there is somebody in your friend group who's going through the same thing. There's a lot of solace to be had to just talking about it.
And I hope more men step up to the plate because people have said to me, um, they're like, okay, so you're basically doing the youngest daughter's job in the family because that's typically who it is. If there's an unmarried daughter in the family, they end up being the caregivers for the parents. I'm the youngest of six boys, so but that doesn't. It shouldn't matter as much as it apparently does. So, guys, come on, step up. It's your mom too, your dad too. And I
Yeah.
shouldn't say it as though nobody is doing it. There's a lot of caregivers that are men too, but I hope that continues to be the case.
So the thing I get from you so much is you have such a big heart. I love talking to people with big hearts and they're open about it.
Thank
One of the
you.
last things I want to hit is you go back to Oswego. You taught a master class in improv there. What is it about Oswego that touches your heart and makes you want to continue to give back?
That it's about community, and it's been about community even when I'm not there. That we keep in touch with our professors, with our classmates, and we have the impetus to even go back. I've been back many times just to enjoy walking around that beautiful campus. Um, and academically, a great school and has gotten an even better reputation than when I was there, and it was already a very good school. And they've continued to invest to make improvements, so it's a great school, great program. I loved my time there, got a lot out of it, and have enjoyed every time that I've gone back. The students are very welcoming.
So we always end with the Oscars question, which is for the very first time, something you may have thought of. It's if you were being awarded an Oscar,
Oh, Lord.
who from Oswego would you like to thank in your acceptance speech? And it could be students, it could be teachers, it could be anybody.
Rosemary Nesbitt, theater professor, God rest her soul, was a wonderful influence on me. Even more so, Mark Cole, who many of you would know because he was around for decades and was the chair of the theater department. Dear friend of mine that I learned probably more about theater from him than anybody. And Ron Medici, who's also unfortunately passed. He was a great influence too. So those three professors in the theater department, yeah, I owe a lot to.
Any students or fellow improv?
No, they were terrible. No, no, there were a lot of great people there. There was really talented people in the couple of years that I was there. I can name some: Dennis Harrington, Joe Ritchie, Mike Moon, Lisa Sleeper, Jennifer Arnold, Mark Terry, Jim Davies. Like all the people that I chose to be in that first year of the improv troupe are very dear to me and helped me put that together and have remained friends ever since.
And when you ask
And my
them,
agent, I want to thank my agent. No, I don't want to thank my agent.
and when you said, "Do you want to be an improv?" They said yes, and.
Yes, and I did.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap this out Tim, thanks so much for taking time to talk to us. For everyone who wants to find out more about Tim, he has his own website. He is also on LinkedIn. He is on IMDb. You can subscribe to his YouTube channel. And most importantly, Tim, we want to sell some books, right?
That'd be nice to have a little, a couple pennies here and there to rub together.
So I'm going to guess search for your books on Amazon using
Yeah.
your name.
Yeah. And in fact, you can even get the Kindle edition, I think is one of them's free and another one's like $1.99. So
Free. Come on.
yeah,
We need some pennies for Tim.
I'm doing fine. I'm taken care of. I'm good.
All right. And if you would like to reach out to us with guest ideas, you can find us on Facebook, also on LinkedIn. You can email us at alumni@oswego.edu. We are always looking for ideas from our over 95,000 alumni. I just found out that number this past week. So
Wow.
it's now
Close
90.
to a big number there.
Yeah. So if you know somebody, please let us know. I'm Dee Perkins, and we'll see you next time on the Oswego Alumni Podcast.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Oswego Alumni Podcast. Please note that the views and opinions shared by our guests are their own and may not reflect those of the Oswego Alumni Association, SUNY Oswego, or its representatives. For guest suggestion, email us at alumni@oswego.edu.